Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. I want to begin this podcast by telling you I will not be here tomorrow. It is Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the holiest day of the Jewish year. And I will be taking the day off. I will be back on Friday. I just want you to know up front where I will and will not be. For those of you who are observing the holiday of Yom Kippur, and it is a holy day, let me wish you a Gamar Hatima Tova, and may you be inscribed in the book of life for health and happiness. And of course, have an easy fast if you are fasting. And now let's get right to it. The federal government has shut down. And the reason is because there seems to be a huge gap between Democrats and Republicans in terms of how to proceed. The important thing that I would like to emphasize this morning is that if the federal government is shut down, I believe that no member of Congress should receive a paycheck during that period of time. Perhaps if members of Congress felt the same heat that we, the American people, feel when the government shuts down, well, maybe they'd stop and think for a moment. What is interesting is to listen to the Republicans and the Democrats going after each other. The most important single thing is that government services are being shut down. But more than that, the President of the United States will have tremendous power to fire or furlough people that he would not have had otherwise. I listened to one Republican leader say, "What are the Democrats doing? They're handing the president more power." And that is exactly what is happening. But we have to confess, admit, and understand that we have a broken political process. And there's enough blame to go around for Democrats and Republicans alike. But who really feels the heat? The American people. And so I do want to suggest formally today that if the government shuts down, members of Congress shouldn't be paid. Pure and simple. And I think on top of that, there needs to be real thought given to what it means to shut the government down in terms of presidential power. Frankly, if I were Donald Trump, who has previously said any president who lets the government shut down has no business being president, what I think is that Donald Trump secretly is rather pleased. He will now be able to make moves that he could not have otherwise made. As far as I'm concerned, we've got a problem, and the next few days will unwind that problem. And I want to talk about another issue, and that is the 800 generals and admirals, military leaders, who met in Quantico with the President and the Secretary of Defense. Please note, I am not calling Pete Hegseth a Secretary of War. According to the law, it is still the Department of Defense. That can't be changed by executive order, nor should it be changed. But let's be blunt. When the President talks of an invasion within, when the President talks about our military training in major American cities, because, well, he wants to exercise greater authority over cities and have the opportunity to blast what he calls the Democrat administrations of mayors and governors state by state. This is a deep concern, and I believe it to be the misuse of the American military. We understand that military troops should never be placed in American cities, ever, unless there is a true national emergency. And there is no national emergency. The only way this will be stopped, and I think what's happening in Portland is a great example, is when Portland goes to court to say to the president, no, you can't do this. But the real question is, how will the courts respond? and I mean particularly the Supreme Court of the United States. Will there be an extension of presidential power at this moment in history? I know that there are some who listen to this podcast who are thrilled with Pete Hegseth, who are thrilled with Donald Trump, who believe that yesterday was a triumph for America. I know that there are those who sincerely believe that what is happening in Portland or in Memphis or, well, in countless cities across America need to be stopped by the National Guard and by order of the president. With all due respect, I disagree. I disagree profoundly. And I believe the damage being done to American democracy is real and genuine. This is not an easy thing for me to say. Normally, when I critique a president, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, I do it on the basis of, well, their policies. But this policy of this president and this administration, when it comes to the military, when it comes to the misuse of power, when it comes to what I think is an arrogance of power and a hubris beyond words, we face a danger, an existential threat to American democracy. Now, I know there are some who are listening who say to me, John, you're exaggerating. I don't believe so. I believe this is a moment when the American people have to understand what's happening. And more important, and let's be clear, the Supreme Court convenes this week. What will happen when the Supreme Court deals with many of these cases? Will they be decided along ideological grounds? And there is yet another question. If the Supreme Court issues an order that Donald Trump does not like, will he obey it? It's a good question. One that I never, ever thought I would have to confront on a broadcast like this. But I am. And I'm suggesting to you that we need to stop and think and reflect on the direction which President Trump and Pete Hegseth is taking our military. We need to applaud those in Oregon who are going to the courts to try to prevent Donald Trump from sending the National Guard into Portland. And we need to stop and think about the implications for Memphis, and indeed for all of America's communities. This is a moment of existential crisis for America. And of course, shutting down the government represents a whole other threat if the president carries through with his statement that he will furlough or fire at random as he wishes. Do you understand what a consequential day this is in the history of our country? Well, we'll see. As I said at the beginning of the podcast, I'm taking tomorrow off. It is Yom Kippur. It'll be a time for me to reflect and think. And I hope you will do the same, whether you're a Jew or not. And may you all, no matter what your faith, be inscribed for a life of health and benefit in the book of life. That is my prayer on this eve of the night before Yom Kippur. Well, I'll be back on Friday. We'll see where the world stands. But believe me, we are in for an interesting period of time, and I can't wait. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am John Rothman. Make sure to follow along. Let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which is, of course, our goal. You can interact with me on LinkedIn, on Facebook. You can email me. I'm happy to have your comments. And whether I agree or disagree, I read what you think. All right, and to Go-Go Zoger, the wonderful producer of this podcast, thanks, Go-Go, for everything you do. I am John Rothman. I'll be back on Friday, right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then.